All right, just imagine this for a second. You wake up, you look out your window, and all you see is red. Just this endless sea of red dust under a weird pale pink sky. There's nobody else. No rescue is coming, not for a long, long time. It's just you, your smarts, and the hostile beauty of Mars. So let's really break down what it would take to survive the ultimate solo mission.
So right off the bat, we have to ask the big question, and it's a personal one. Could you actually make it? What would it really take to be the last person standing on an entire planet? This isn't just some sci-fi fantasy, you know. It's a massive puzzle of science, engineering, and just raw human grit.
Before we get into any of the fancy tech, let's just focus on one single number, -80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's minus 62 Celsius. I mean, just let that sink in for a moment. And here's the kicker. That's not the coldest it gets on a bad day. That is the average temperature. We're not just talking about another world. This is one of the most hostile places we can possibly imagine.
And that brings us to our first huge challenge, the environment itself. I mean, forget about sightseeing. You gotta think of Mars as this planet-sized puzzle where every single move you make is literally a matter of life or death.
You know, here on Earth, we totally take our atmosphere for granted. It gives us air to breathe, sure, but it also pushes down on us with pressure that, well, holds us together. On Mars, the danger is a double whammy. Its atmosphere is so incredibly thin, we're talking less than 1% of ours, that not only would you suffocate instantly, but the super low pressure could literally cause the liquids in your body to boil. Yeah, not good.
Okay, so how in the world do you even start to solve a problem like that? Well, you've got to start with the absolute basics. This next part is all about securing the holy trinity of survival: air, water, and food.
And wow, this chart really just drives the point home, doesn't it? Look at that giant slice. 95% of the air you'd be trying to breathe is carbon dioxide. On Earth, it's not even 1%. You just can't survive that. So the question becomes, how do you make your own oxygen on a planet that's basically full of poison? Well, the answer is this really cool concept called in situ resource utilization. It's a fancy way of saying living off the land. And the piece of tech that makes it happen is this thing, MOXIE. NASA has actually tested a version of this on Mars already. And guess what? It works. It actually turns Mars's biggest threat, all that CO2, into your single most important asset.
So how does this little magic box do it? Honestly, it's pretty brilliant in its simplicity. First, it just breathes in the Martian air, all that CO2. Then it uses a super hot process called electrolysis to literally crack those CO2 molecules apart. And then it just exhales pure, breathable oxygen. It's basically like a mechanical tree for a brand new world.
So MOXIE has you covered for oxygen. Great. But what about water? You might see all these cool pictures of what look like ancient riverbeds on Mars, but don't let them fool you. The planet's ridiculously low pressure and freezing cold temps mean any liquid water on the surface would just poof, vanish, or freeze in an instant. The only water you can get is locked away as ice underground.
This means your new job title is futuristic ice miner. You'd need robotic drills to dig down and get that buried ice. Then you'd have to melt it down and purify it. But the most critical step, by far, is the last one, creating a closed-loop system. Yeah, just like on the International Space Station. Every single drop of water from your sweat, your breath, even your pee gets collected and recycled. On Mars, absolutely nothing is wasted.
Okay, so you have air and water. Now you're hungry, but you can't just go outside and plant some potatoes. The Martian soil, it's called regolith, isn't just lifeless dirt. It's actually filled with these toxic chemicals called perchlorates, and for us humans, those are really bad news. So yeah, the ground itself is basically poisonous to Earth life.
The only way around this is to go full-on high-tech. You'd have to build an indoor farm, right? Using something like hydroponics to grow plants in nutrient-rich water instead of that toxic soil. You'd need some seriously powerful LEDs to act as your sun, and you'd want to focus on tough, fast-growing crops. And because you're totally alone, the whole system would have to be run by AI, because if you get sick, there's nobody else there to water the plants.
All right, you can breathe, you can drink, you can eat. Now, you need a place to live. You need a home, a shelter that can protect you from, well, everything else Mars is going to throw at you. And trust me, the elements are no joke. Just look at these temperature swings. Even on a nice warm summer day at the equator, the temperature can drop 170 degrees Fahrenheit the second the sun goes down. Your little habitat has to handle that, plus a constant bombardment of cosmic radiation and these massive planet-wide dust storms.
So how do you build a house in a place like that? Well, the smartest solution is to use the planet against itself. The best options are probably natural shelters, like finding an old underground lava tube. Or you could build a dome and then just pile a few feet of that Martial dirt on top of it. You'd be using the local regolith as a natural shield against radiation and those wild temperature swings. And of course, you're not doing this by hand. Robots would be doing all the heavy lifting and repairs. Now, to run all this, your oxygen machine, your water recycler, the farm, the robots, you are going to need power. A lot of it. Solar seems like the obvious choice, right? But it's super vulnerable to those giant dust storms that can literally block out the sun for months. And that's why the safer bet, the more reliable long-term solution, is probably a small nuclear fission reactor. It would give you steady, uninterrupted power no matter what the crazy Martian sky is doing.
So, this brings us to what might just be the hardest challenge of them all. You can solve all the engineering problems in the world, but can you survive the battle that's raging inside your own head? We're talking about the huge psychological and physiological toll of being completely and utterly alone.
Let's start with your body. On Mars, you'd weigh only about 38% of what you do here on Earth. Now that might sound kind of fun for a little while, but over time, that low gravity would cause your muscles to wither away and your bones to lose their density. It's this constant, quiet threat to your physical health.
But the mental toll, that could be so much worse. I mean, can you even imagine that level of loneliness? There's no one to talk to, no one to bounce ideas off of when a life support system starts blinking red. The risk of crippling depression, of intense cabin fever, would be, well, astronomical. Out there, you're your own doctor, your own engineer, and your own therapist.
So, to make it, your toolkit can't just have wrenches and wires. It has to have mental health tools too. And remember, you can't just pick up the phone and call home. There's like a 20-minute communication delay each way, so a real-time conversation is impossible. That's where a super strict exercise routine, maybe an advanced AI companion to talk to, and immersive VR escapes to an earthly beach might literally be the only things that keep you sane.
So, we've kind of laid out a blueprint for how a person could maybe survive. But let's pull back from this really fascinating thought experiment for a minute and ask, what's the actual reality of trying to send one person to Mars?
Well, the journey would start way before you ever get there. We'd have to send robots ahead to build the basic infrastructure first. Your first decade on the planet would be purely about survival and just slowly expanding your little base. But a truly self-sustaining settlement, we are probably looking at a 50 to 100-year timeline. Your solo mission would just be the very first, very fragile step.
And that really brings us to the big reality check. As cool as the whole lone pioneer story sounds, pretty much every expert and space agency on the planet agrees on one thing. The first humans on Mars will be a team. They have to be. The risks are just way too high for one person to handle. You need backup skills, and backup for psychological support.
Which leaves us with this final thought. We've seen that the tech to survive alone on Mars is actually plausible. It's even on the horizon. But the biggest question isn't about the hardware. It's about the software of the human mind. We can build the machines, sure, but do we, as a species, have what it takes to endure that kind of deep, profound, absolute solitude? That is the real final frontier.